All right, hello everybody, and welcome to week 3 of the Dimes and Donuts podcast, your deep dive into the best fantasy players of the week, the worst fantasy players of the week, and a recap and review of every single team in the BAAD Owners League. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Nick. We've had a bit of a format change this week to hopefully keep the time down. We've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I'm really excited about what we've done. I think it's honestly completely upped the game. It's so much spicier. So
yeah, super spicy. I think that everybody's going to enjoy it a lot more. And to even add an extra layer of spice, we'd like to introduce our co-host for this episode, our special guest, if you will, Abi. Abi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all? Hey, everyone. I am the owner of the Dallas Clovers team. We had a bunch of stuff go down this week that I'm very excited to talk about.
All right, so for the trades of the week, this is our first trade movement of the season and the league in general, with it being season 1. So it's been a very exciting week for everyone. 4 teams have been involved in quite a few trades, actually. So the Plano Nukes, my team, Atlanta Cicadas, Irving Indica, and Dallas Clovers have all been involved in some way, shape, or form this past week on the transfer portal of the fantasy football BAAD Owners League. And yeah, let's just hop right into the first trade.
Let's do it. All right, so excited to talk about this trade.
Okay, so for the first trade of this wacky first week of trading, I received a 2023 second round pick by giving up Matt Breida, Jeff Wilson, and Dontrell Hilliard to the Atlanta Cicadas. It might kind of look weird at first with all of them being, backup running backs on their respective teams. None of them are their RB1, but Elijah Moore is out, so Jeff Wilson is now their starter. Jeff Wilson, having previously been a starter on the 49ers, already super familiar with the team, already very comfortable with the team in the playbook. It's already instant sort of value right there. And then Matt Breida, being behind the Atlanta Cicadas RB1, Saquon Barkley, gives the Atlanta Cicadas a little bit of a safety net. If Saquon Barkley does go down, Matt Breida instantly steps up. Again, a reliable running back who's experienced, has had time as a number 1 running back. It's not like you're just throwing in some random guy who's unproven. And then Dontrell Hilliard, who's of course the backup of Derrick Henry, who in week 1 produced massively, getting over 20 fantasy points, which is of course fantastic for a running back. So I think this was a pretty good trade for both sides. I, of course, was, who going into this week was 0-4, trying to just, can sell off some of my players, consolidate some value, and then the Cicadas get a bit of a safety net in their running back situation, which before this was pretty shallow.
Yeah, right. I think, a 2023 second round pick for a team like the Atlanta Cicadas, who looks to be, a top 3 team in this league, isn't going to be as valuable as others. But at the same time, I still personally give this trade to the Plano Nukes because, yes, they're handcuffs for potentially, injury-prone running backs. But I don't know. A bench player is a bench player. And, in order to get rid of 3 of those to get a, second round pick seems like a steal, in my opinion. What do you think?
I completely agree with that. On top of, with 10 people being in our league, a second round pick in this league is still a player most likely from the first round of the real draft. There's a good chance you get a starter off this. And I love the trade for you, Nick.
Yeah, and especially because with us being offense and defense in our league, the second round is a lot more valuable than, the second round of an offense-only league. Because, exactly like you said, sometimes in the real draft, you can go a first-round fantasy pick might be like a second-round, second-day player in the real NFL draft. But with how many defensive players we need, you can start to snag those early IDP players that actually went in the first round in the second round. So I totally agree with you. I think picks in general super strong, especially this early in the league, and when going into this week I was 0-4. I think it was still pretty great on both sides, but I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think I was winning somehow. So there you go.
That's right, exactly.
Always. You don't take the trade unless you feel like you're on the up.
There you go. But let's just, move on to the next trade of the week, which was once again me, but it was also with you this time, being with the Dallas Clovers. I traded you Marcus Mariota in return for a 2023 fourth round pick. I'm kind of curious, what were your thoughts about this trade in particular?
So when I went in, I was also 0-4. So I was, looking for anything at this point. My QB2 was Trey Lance, got injured, out for the season. My other QBs were Matt Stafford, who is a hit or a miss, honestly. Like, he's a veteran. He, got to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, but he's just not all there. And I didn't know what else to do. I needed a quarterback, and everyone's asking price was a bit too much. And I noticed that you had quarterbacks that you didn't seem to be using. So I approached you, and I was willing to make a bunch of trades, but you came up and offered Mariota for a fourth round pick. And at that point, I was just thinking about putting a QB2 within like the super flex, because otherwise I would have had to put a running back that may put up 8 points as my QB or as my super flex. I just didn't think that was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a pretty decent stockpile of quarterbacks, and Marcus Mariota, I of course had played in week 2 due to Dak being injured, but I have Zach Wilson and Dak Prescott both on IR during week 3. And I felt pretty confident that I don't need, a super deep amount of quarterbacks. And I'd rather, trade it off to a more quarterback needy team like you, right?
Yes,
in exchange
absolutely.
for a fourth round pick, especially because, both of us are 0-4. I mean, let's be honest at this point. It's only week 3, right? You're only week 3. But you're starting to think, okay, well, maybe we're going to have pretty decent draft picks. Let's try to take some of your draft picks. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And like with my other QB was Riddler, but he's not going to start this season with whatever. So I have him on my taxi squad. Couldn't take him out. He's not going to play. And originally I wanted Dak, but your asking price for Dak was way too much, and we both knew that.
Yep, 100%.
So,
Are you willing to divulge what that asking price was?
it would have. We didn't even get to it because I offered a couple of high picks, but I'm fairly sure it would have taken a first round pick and some other players that were on the top of my list.
It would have taken multiple.
That would have been the biggest. Yeah, that would have been the biggest trade, all season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on Dak. He was my second overall pick in the startup draft. It would have taken multiple first round 2023 picks, for that immediate value.
Yeah, understood. So, yeah, from the outside looking in, and after hearing what both of y'all have said, I can't even give this trade a winner or a loser, because obviously Abi had, something in his roster that he had to shore up, a lack of a quarterback space, and, someone that had a litany of quarterbacks, at least when the trade was made, in the Plano Nukes, especially with having Zach Wilson coming back. Getting a fourth rounder for Marcus Mariota is great. I might lean slightly towards Abi and the Dallas Clovers, just because it is hard to find a starting quarterback just randomly anywhere. So yeah, fourth rounder for someone that's definitely going to be the starter in Atlanta all season, if not next season, is pretty good. So yeah, I think it's a very even trade, in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, totally agree. Honestly, this was one of the better, just more, one for one, easy. So hopping into the third trade of the week, however, Ubby, this one was you with the Atlanta Cicadas.
You gotta explain this one.
Yeah, you gave up Terry McLaurin and in exchange received Ryan Tannehill, Allen Robinson, and a whopping $2 of fab.
For your pride. $2 for your pride.
So me and Jared had a lot of communication. So I originally approached him asking for Brady because, as I've stated with the previous trade, I wanted a quarterback, and I realized that just having one wasn't good enough, because when I only had 2, one got injured, and I was left, trying to make all these trades. So I figured I'd just go for 2 immediately and get it over with. And he was willing to give up Brady, but his asking price was a bit too much. I don't exactly remember what he asked for. But for Tannehill, he wanted a wide receiver 1 that was better than Allen Robinson. And I was willing to take a hit, which I know doesn't look so great for me right now, but Allen Robinson is on my bench as of right now, and I'm comfortable with him being there because Tannehill is actually starting for me all over Stafford, who's against the 49ers, and I figured that pick would hurt me maybe for this couple of weeks, but it might help me in the future because I didn't really appreciate Terry's performance the first week either. So I figured it is what it is, and I just have to take a little bit of a hit for this trade just to get Tannehill.
Got it. So it looks like you received 2 quarterbacks. What was your kind of thought process there?
So my entire thing was when I started the draft originally, I thought having 3 quarterbacks was good because I'd have one as a backup for a bye week. And then I realized that one of the quarterbacks I picked was not going to start. And I didn't realize that, which was completely my fault, obviously. And when one got injured, I was left with no option. So I realized I need at least 3 starting level quarterbacks to have a chance in case one goes down or one goes like in a bye week. And with that logic, I figured that I would get Mariota, which I did, and then immediately reached out to Jared, who also had a stockpile of QBs. And obviously I wanted the higher level QBs, but asking prices for all the higher level QBs are much too much, like, for what I was willing to do. And I felt like Terry was worth getting a QB and another wide receiver that I could play as a flex in a certain week that I need to.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And I do think that Ryan Tannehill and Marcus Mariota are about that sort of same level, too, of quarterback, right? So it seems like you were in that sort of range looking for that sort of quarterback, so makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think we're missing a really big part of this trade here. I mean, the $2. I mean, where was your head at? I mean, that's not nothing. That's not zero value.
The reason for that was I was at $998, right? And originally in my trade, I had offered for another quarterback, for Brady, I had offered some number ending with 8, so I'd have a FAAB ending in 0. So just to make me at 1,000, he offered me $2 along with it because he knew Terry was clearly the best player in this trade.
Right, understood. Yeah, he made you whole there. So my initial grade is definitely, I think the Atlanta Cicadas won this trade. Again, you were addressing needs, but just because you're addressing needs doesn't mean that, the value, changes that much from player to player. So yeah, I think Scary Terry, especially, considering that he'll probably be on a different team in the next 2 or 3 years, could pay dividends for the Cicadas. Whereas Allen Robinson has shown time and time again that he's not really a fantasy wide receiver 1 or 2. Like, he could be fine for a flex or for a bye week. And Tannehill, the Titans have taken a big dip this year, so we just have to see, how he progresses moving forward as well. But
I agree.
Sure.
I
got to give the Cicadas a dub here, but I definitely see where your head was at.
No, I completely agree. Like, I made this trade knowing that the Atlanta Cicadas are coming up on top, but this was a trade that I felt I needed to make because otherwise, like, Terry was on the bet or on my starting lineup getting the points, but I wasn't winning because I didn't have any QBs. So it was at the point where I had to take a slight L, which hopefully will be made up for in the future.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, and I do think that one thing that has to be said is that, especially with quarterbacks, you're going to have to overpay a lot of the time. It's just, there's so few of them, and they're so valuable. So I think you might start seeing a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, well, on to the next trade. We had myself trading away DeAndre Hopkins. So I traded away DeAndre Hopkins and received Irving Indica's 2023 second round and 4th round pick. I was pretty happy about this. Once again, DeAndre Hopkins obviously suspended for the first half of the season.
Yeah, this is robbery. This was insane. I was shocked when I saw this.
Yeah. Especially with his age, yes, DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best wide receivers, right? But his production has honestly gone down over the past few years. So getting rid of him for a second and a 4th was fantastic in my eyes.
He offered me, I don't know if you remember, Nick, but you offered me that trade too, but for a different pick, and I immediately said no.
Yeah, I was involved in this as well.
Yep.
Luckily, I did back out when I did. I went through their depth chart, and I'm just going to read it off for y'all here for their skill position players. Again, people that will be taking targets away from D-Hop. That is James Conner, Hollywood Brown, AJ Green, and Zach Ertz.
Yep.
That is a tough room to compete with for targets. I don't think that I mean, Hollywood and DeAndre, I think Hollywood is definitely still on the rise and will apex him even this season. D-Hop is not getting younger, that's for sure. I mean, he's 30 years old, so he's not like, too crazy. And what do we know about, Cardinals receivers like Fitzgerald? He might be here until he's like 43, but,
he was also injured at the end of last season too. So like, he's getting to that age, he's getting injured. I don't know. I think this was a great trade for you, Nick.
Yeah, and suspended for 6 games at the beginning of the season. You have no idea what he's going to be like. I mean, I think, the Nukes and I went over this, like, I want to say a week ago. If you just go down his stat totals, for the last 2 seasons, he's not like this Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, I could have a 45-point game guy. Like, the ceiling for him seems to be like high 20s. He does not peak above that often. So, yeah, I think this is, without a doubt, out of every trade that we've seen, the biggest fleece of the week. And the Plano Nukes definitely win, taking a 2nd and a 4th rounder next year.
Well, I'm happy to hear all of that, of course. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely happy about it. Like you said, I will say one thing that helped a lot with this trade is that there was a lot of demand for him. Quite a few teams reached out, and I, told other teams, hey, this is what my best offer is. And so there was a bit of a bidding war, which is why I ended up at 2 and 4th. That wasn't, I don't believe, the initial offers I was receiving. So it really just came down to who wanted him more, and I think that due to just all the demand, there was a slight overpay. But let's hope
sometimes you have to do it. I mean, you got to remember that Irving Indica are trying to win this season, right?
Exactly.
They're trying to make that Empire rule go into place. So, I mean, if you have D-Hop for the next 2 seasons, he's going to be great. Especially, I mean, on his team, that's a flex. That's a great flex option. So, yeah, he overpaid, but sometimes you have to get what you want to,
especially to try to make that last push,
Yep.
And I mean, if Irving Indigo ends up winning the season, then I'd be like, it's worth it. Like, I don't care about the picks if I win.
Exactly. Yeah, this is definitely a results pick for both of y'all. Every time you trade a pick, that's a results pick, right? If you get somebody that doesn't perform or doesn't start on your team, it technically wasn't worth it. And yeah, if Irving Indica doesn't, at least finish top 3 or even get the Super Bowl this year, that's gonna hurt come draft season.
Completely agree. So let's of course hop into the next one. The big one.
Holy crud.
All right, so this final trade of the week was the Plano Nukes to the Dallas Clovers, me and Ubby. So I received George Kittle, Aiden Hutchinson, and the Dallas Clovers 2023 6th-round pick. And Ubby, you received from me Randy Gregory, Pat Fryermuth, Jonathan Greenard, a 2023 second round, a 2023 second round, a 2023 third round, a 2023 fourth round, and a 2023 6th round picks.
Man.
Woo! So definitely the first blockbuster trade.
As someone said, the draft is my Super Bowl, baby.
Yeah, at this point, I think that this is like the defining moment where you kind of took over as the pick leader of next year. I was prior to this. I had 10 draft picks. But after trading all this away, I would back down to the normal. So I guess clarification, because we never actually mentioned it. We have a 6th-round rookie draft because we're offense and defense. More traditionally, a lot of dynasty leagues tend to do 3-round is a little more traditional. But we doubled it to 6 since we also have IDP players. But yeah, so I'm back. After this trade, it looks crazy, but I still have 6 rookie draft picks.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you still have 6 picks, but I'd love to see what round those picks are. Like, do you have like 1 through 6?
I have. So,
round,
if I'm remembering correctly, because I don't have it pulled up, it's a 1,
Sure.
2, 2 4s, 5, 6. So I'm just missing a 3rd, and it was downgraded to a 4th.
Okay. That's not too crazy.
That's not crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, based on your previous success in trades, like for Mariota, or trading away Mariota, and also trading away, D-Hop. You definitely got a lot of capital to make this trade work. And wow.
Talking about the Mariota trade, this was made 2 days after, and one of the picks I got back was my own 4th round pick.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that 2023 4th round is the 2023 4th round pick that you traded me.
I love that.
That was one of my selling points. I didn't like that I had to trade a pick for Mariota of all people, so I wanted it back.
There you go. But yes, of course, so you put George Kittle up on the trade block, and there is actually a lot of history to this trade, obviously, right? I don't think big trades like this happen, over a few minutes. I had been trying to get Aiden Hutchinson for you for the previous week, right?
Mm-hmm. I wonder why you chose that week.
But I wasn't quite willing to commit to him because his week 1 he only got 1 point, right?
Yes, that was why the trade talks even opened, because you probably felt that I'd be willing to talk about it because he only scored 1.
Exactly. So then I was like, okay, I want him. I still believe in him. Aiden Hutchinson is a stud as far as talent goes. There's not a lot of defensive linemen who are Heisman runner-ups. He's the 2nd overall pick of the 2022 NFL draft. I was excited. I threw some things your way. You wanted a little bit more. I wanted a little bit less. I wasn't quite willing to agree to it. Then week 2 comes around and he puts up 36 points, I believe.
Yes, on my bench.
Yeah, on your bench. You benched him. He puts up 36 points.
I would have won that week if I didn't bench him. I left 60 points on the bench, and it was very disappointing. And I was super mad where at that point, I knew internally that I was willing to trade him because he just pissed me off so much.
There you go.
I was like, I will, but I knew his value was a lot higher than it was at 1-2, which is another reason this trade worked out.
100%, because then you also put George Kittle up on the trade block, and my tight end 1, it was currently TJ Hawkinson, who I still enjoy very much. I think TJ Hawkinson's great, but there's a difference between the tier 1, tier 1.5, and the tier 2 tight ends, and I think that TJ Hawkinson is kind of at that top end, low end of tier 1.5, top end tier 2, whereas George Kittle is definitely either bottom of tier 1 or top of tier 1.5. It's an upgrade, straight upgrade. And then I was like, well, why don't we just try to get George Kittle and Aiden Hutchinson? So I threw the farm at you. And
when you did that, I knew this likely was going to work because I knew how much you wanted Aiden. Yep. And I wanted to get rid of Kittle. For me, he's always been injured. He was kind of old. I wanted younger guys, and I wanted picks. And I figured this was a good chance to get as much out of you as you would be willing to give me for both of them.
Yep.
And I figured, I was internally hoping that Aiden would go back to his first week performance rather than his second week performance.
Right, exactly. Oh man, which this is gonna be one of those trades that it's gonna, I think, be a few years before you really know who won.
It's going to depend on how Aiden does throughout, the next couple of seasons, as well as what my picks turn out to be.
Exactly.
Because obviously we have no idea. But for this week, for that first week, I was very happy with how things turned out.
So week 3, right? This is of course recorded after the week 3 results. Aiden Hutchinson went back to his week 1 performance and only got me 1 point.
And Randy Gregory went out and got me more than 15. I think he got me around 16.
I think it was 17 or 19. I did go back and look. Yeah.
Yes. So it was enough for me to win my matchup. And obviously I know this is 1 week and it doesn't really give me anything, but I felt very validated because before this trade even went down, after he scored 36 points on my bench, I had made a joke on the Discord where I said, if he drops 1 point again, I'm going to drop him really, but not really. And at that point, when I saw that he dropped 1 point again, it made me feel really validated. I know it's not going to last. I know he's a stud, but it made me feel really good.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah, you just got to live with your decisions. Whatever you got to tell yourself to feel good about him. No, seriously though, I think Nick, you summed it up perfectly. This trade, just due to its magnitude and the amount of picks, we have no idea who's going to win this. I think this year.
Oh, my bad. So, what I was saying was, Pat, I wanted as well, because he's a tight end 1, and he's young, and he's much younger than Kittle, so I figured he would be in the running for a little bit longer. And he's essentially my TE1 now. So I like the trade, which everyone in the league was very shocked with the trade for the most part. But I honestly think I will come up on top. But I like trade for me.
I mean, really the question, though, is do you think people were shocked because of, thinking one side won or one side didn't? Or more so, I mean, this, compared to the previous trades we just talked about, this is huge, right? This is by far the biggest trade.
It's the volume of picks. It's the, oh my gosh, like your season is now, turning into, okay, well, what are we going to do in the draft, right? Like you've just devoted so much energy to it. I'm not saying that like this trade has tanked you for the season, right? I mean, getting Randy Gregory, like you said, a young tight end #1, and even Jonathan Grenard, who we haven't talked about, is putting up like 12, 13 points every week.
Yep.
So they're all serviceable players that, most teams would start. So it's not even like that it was a fleece. It's not anything too crazy. I think, again, it's just the volume. It's just the shock of seeing that many numbers on a stat sheet for a trade that really kind of sent the league into a frenzy.
And another thing with this trade specifically, one of the reasons I offered my 6th round pick was because I thought that the rookie draft was in snake draft order, which Nick for sure told me before he accepted the trade that it wasn't. But since I made the offer and it was my fault for not realizing, I kept the trade and I was okay with it. But that was just a funny bit where I was not aware that the rookie draft would be working differently from our original draft.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I saw the 6th round pick swap added, and I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense considering you're losing out on that. Why would you offer that to me? So I messaged him, and I was like, hey, you do know that that's not how that works, right? So we got it cleared up, but he still wanted to go forward with it, so my conscience is clear.
It was a mistake on my end, and I made, there was no bad faith on yours, so I was okay with making that little exchange.
Also, I mean, it's 6th round.
And you guys are both, unfortunately, I hate to say it, bottom of the barrel teams in this league as of right now. So who knows? I mean, those picks could go either way. And I hope
9th of 10.
I'd love to follow those 2 6th rounds this next year too. I'd love to see who you guys end up.
It's big.
It could be huge, just due to a mistake. But yeah, I think we've summed up the blockbuster. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so that's it for the trades of the week. Now, hopping into dimes of the week.
The dimes of the week. Ooh. Oh my god.
So we are, like we sort of mentioned earlier, we're no longer going through every single player that was started by a BAAD Owners team. We're just going to go over the absolute dimes, right? And who had them, what happened with them. And Garrett, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sure. I think when we go through dimes of the week, you're going to see a lot of repeat players. And let's go into our first dime of the week with Lamar Jackson, who was our BAAD quarterback of the week last week as well, with 40.42 points. Lamar is still, he's an absolute machine. He's Lamarvelous, putting up big points for the Irving Indica week after week after week. It's like starting 2 quarterbacks in the same slot. Like
no, it's worse than that. He was playing me, and he outscored my QB1 and QB2 combined.
Yeah, that's what he does. That's what he's been doing the last 2 weeks. He's fighting for a contract right now, putting his body literally on the line for the game. And yeah, I think he's
honestly,
definitely going to be in the slot.
I invent a time machine. I go back in time and sign it in the summer because every game his price tag is just going up.
Yeah, definitely.
100%. Yeah, the Ravens are going to massively regret that.
Yep. All right, Nick, you want to take our next guy?
Yeah, so next up we had Derrick Henry as the running back of the week. 25.3 points, which is a little funny. That seems low for the running back of the week. But
that's because it is.
It definitely is, right? Derrick Henry coming back from the grave. Not really, but kind of at the same time. Put up 25.3 points for the TD11 Tudgays.
To be fair, he did hurt his shoulder and leave a little bit, so he could have possibly done more if he was in the whole game.
That's fair. That's scary. King Henry's back for sure, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
He also did it against Las Vegas, and they are looking awful this year so far. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but to do it up against that line with Max Crosby is interesting.
That's what I was thinking, right?
But still, it's still a bad team getting absolutely trucked. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what if the King is truly back. But he hasn't been doing well this season. I mean, the first 2 games, I mean, he had 7 points and 8.5 points.
Well, first game I believe he went out, right? Is that not
I
right?
don't know.
I
have
could
no
be
idea
wrong.
that even.
I know.
that's
I
worse.
believe in the first game he went out, and then in the third game, like this week, he went out towards the end. So he was in it for most of the game.
Right. Okay. But then, yeah, let's hop right into the wide receiver of the week, Devonta Smith. Ubby, you want to talk about Devonta Smith at all?
Yes. So I watched this game, and I was angry throughout this entire game because they were playing beautiful football. It was disgusting to watch. Jalen Hurts looked like an MVP passing to Devonta Smith, and he was making catches that I didn't know he could make. And with A.J. Brown taking some of his targets, I didn't think he would be doing this well, but it's probably helped him, honestly, because the CB1s and the safeties are covering A.J., and it leaves him open.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that we're just now seeing this breakout from him. If you remember correctly, we are the Dimes and Donuts podcast, so we categorize these things. He actually had a donut in week 1. 0 points against Detroit. Put up 15 last week, against the Vikings, in which the Eagles just absolutely dominated. And it was against Washington. They don't have the best defense. Every single game they've been in is a shootout, but still 169 passing yards. That's incredible for your third game. So yeah, I don't see him going down. They're definitely finally linking up. They're probably both getting into playing shape, getting more chemistry with each other. And yeah, if you got I would say second front runner to the MVP, behind Lamar Jackson right now, and Jalen Hurts throwing to you, that's awesome.
Do you guys think it's going to last, though? Because I believe that he can, get 15 to 18 points a game, but I feel like 30 is just insane.
Have you seen the Eagles' schedule this year? Like, they are number 1 seed. Like, they have it written all over them for the NFC right now. Like, they
have the easiest second seed schedule because they got second in division last year.
Right.
Yeah, no, they have a super, super easy schedule the rest of the way. I think 11 of their remaining games are all against teams that missed the playoffs last year. So
wow,
that's good fodder for the Eagles going forward, for Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts going forward. So this is not going to be the only 30-point game he has, guaranteed it right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and Devonta Smith and Hurts, of course, went to Alabama.
Yep.
Did they play together at Bama?
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
for
so
a year.
exactly. They had a year
yeah.
crossover. So that, is going to be a little bit of chemistry that's already pre-built in, right? And then they're starting to get to that experience level in which they start to come into their own as an NFL duo. Both still on rookie contracts, both highly placed draft positions, that pedigree that's associated with it. You might see this more and more. But let's hop on in to the tight end of the week, to absolutely no surprise to anyone, honestly. Mark Andrews for the Atlanta Cicadas, 28.9 points. Is anyone here shocked that Mark Andrews was the tight end of the week?
He was our bad tight end last week. He's going to be the bad tight end next week, and then next week, and then next week. This man will be on here like 8 or 9 times before the week is over.
Seriously.
Or before the year is over. It's either going to be Travis Kelce, and
exactly.
With the way Travis Kelce was dropping touchdowns last week, we got to look into that. That was a little weird.
That was
he just basically gave this to Mark Andrews. It is a 2-person race every single week for this award, and that's why Kelce won it in week 1, and Mark Andrews has had it back-to-back weeks now. So,
do you guys think Kittle will come into that once he's
Heck no.
been?
Heck no. It's also the caliber of quarterback that he's playing with too. Like,
That's
you got
true.
Lamar Jackson, and oh my gosh,
Patrick
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
Jimmy G, and then Patrick Mahomes. Like, which one of those does not belong there? Right.
Hey, to be fair, Jimmy G has the most
first 2
rings.
weeks of the season. Yeah, Kittle didn't play the first 2 weeks of the season. Only put up like 7 points this last game. I mean, he's so injury prone, and I don't think that he's as important to that offense as Mark Andrews is to this one. So
No, he's like Lamar's favorite target, honestly, and he's trustworthy. He got a new contract. He's always there putting his body on the line, and he doesn't drop as much as Travis has this season, which, as you said, it's been weird. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, Hollywood's gone too now.
Yep.
For the Ravens. So just give him even more targets.
Yeah, no, I mean, like y'all said. But then hopping into the defensive side of the ball now, Max Crosby, who we mentioned earlier when talking about Derrick Henry, what an absolute beast. So, Ubby, Max Crosby on your team, talk to us. Like, how are you feeling about this pick, right?
I don't have many untouchables on my team, clearly, based on, our block trade.
Right.
But Max Crosby was a guy that I knew I would not trade. I went into the draft, like the original draft, knowing I wanted him. I saw when people were starting to pick defensive players, and I timed it perfectly. And I remember, Garrett, I believe it was you that was saying that you wanted him as well, like right before I picked him. And
right. Yeah. So you were pick 10 in the draft, and then coming back around on that snake end, I'm 8. And you picked it right before I was going to, because I knew the person like in the middle like was not going to get it because they needed a quarterback at the time, I believe. And oh my gosh, I wanted that tandem. Well, honestly, like that trio of Max Crosby, Nick Bosa, and Micah Parsons that I could have just owned that defensive line spot for like 10 years.
No, yeah, I was not going to let you do that. I wanted Nick Bosa. You got him. I got Joey Bosa, but I wanted Max, and he just got a new contract as well. And I knew he was going to be there for a couple of years. He's a beast, and I was fully willing to bet that somebody would take him that round if it wasn't for me. And I bet right. And, he's been one of my best performers. He's, brings tears to my eyes when I watch his games. I'm like, thank you for doing your job, sir.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And he got 31 points with only 1 sack. Typically when we see a 30 banger from, a defensive lineman, like there's at least 2 sacks in there just because they're valued so heavily in this league. But I mean, he was doing it everywhere, like tackle for losses, solo tackles, just normal QB hits. He forced a fumble. Like he was
everywhere.
Everything he could to wreck Ryan and their game plan. So
and they still lost.
They still lost. Yeah, they still lost even with this dude going absolutely off. But yeah, like you said, right now he is the 5th best defensive line in terms of points this year. And I would only see that trending up, for years.
And for a while, too. He's not that old. He's young.
No, he's 25.
Yeah, he's young.
No, that's what I'm saying. I said
you've got him for a while.
I wanted 10 years out of this dude, and he'll definitely get it.
So very excited to see. He was my will not trade for any reason. This would have been like my DAC, like multiple first round picks. Like, it would have taken a lot for me to give him up,
100%.
Which nobody would give me anyway.
But yeah, so moving on to the DBs of the week, Javon Holland for me, finally getting a defensive player up here. I've been having some defensive struggles. 38 points.
What did he have last week?
Oh man, what did he have last week? It was not.
5.
I believe it was pretty good.
Points.
Let me just take a quick
he had
look.
5 points. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, the Miami defense as a whole has been playing fantastic for me. Last week he only had 5 points, right?
Yeah.
So I throw him in. My thought process honestly was that they're playing the Bills, so he's going to get a lot more work, just because they're such a pass-heavy team. So I figured, okay, well, he might get a few tackles, solo tackles, when he misses the ball and Stephon Diggs just wrecks him and whatever. You know what I mean? No, 10 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and a forced fumble was Javon Holland's stat line.
Well, here's what I'd like to bring to the table. Anybody that picked a Miami defensive player or Bills offensive player this week got points, because if you looked at like the disparity between the time on field, like those defensive players from Miami were on the field for 40 of those 60 minutes. Like the time of possession was absolutely crazy. I think the Bills had 250 more yards of offense than the Miami Dolphins did, and they still lost. So yeah, your defensive backs are going to be running all over the field, getting plenty of solo tackles, making plays if that happens, and your team still wins. So that stat line makes total sense if you were watching that game, which is a crazy game too. I mean,
it was a great game. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Such a, two good quarterbacks. Obviously, I prefer Josh Allen over Tua, but Tua has been showing it this year. But, Miami defense is something else, and it's been great to watch.
Yeah, I actually have 3 Miami defensive players in my active lineup.
Wow.
So I'm committed to them.
That's crazy. I would not be that good, but I'm glad that you are.
Oh, 100%. And you know what? Linebackers of the week, I got another one. Roquan Smith. Finally, I mean, Roquan Smith's been super consistent for me, always putting up great points for a linebacker, but this week he just popped off. Closing out the Bears game with an interception. I'm sure you all saw that. It was absolutely fantastic, but he's the reason I like Roquan Smith so much for fantasy is because he does not rely on sacks to get crazy amounts of points. He doesn't rely on fumbles, like forced fumbles, passes defended. He does that sort of stuff, but he's just consistently high tackle numbers. He's just all over the field.
Yep. Yeah, he's not a boom or bust guy. He's just a, middling to great player every single week. Like you said, the lowest he scored for you was 16 points, and his projected for the rest of the year is either 22 or above, basically. So, yeah, he's an incredible pick. One of the best linebackers and the second taken in our draft. Yeah, he's going to pay dividends. And after looking at, I guess, your last player, you had two bad players of the week, the linebacker and the DB. So Javon Holland and Roquan Smith. You were not going to win this week without those points, right? Like, would it have even been close? You had narrow victory. So those two going off really sealed it for you.
100%. I mean, it was great. Like, that was awesome. I was jumping up and down. I was hyped. It was a great time.
Yeah, especially the interception. I bet that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, that interception was huge.
Yeah.
That your team was astounding to me, because if they didn't do that, the median score would have been lower, which I really needed to happen. So you kind of ruined my day, honestly.
Yeah, you definitely blew up a lot of people on the median, because I think a lot of people missed that. But we'll get into that when we get into scores and stuff.
All right, so hopping into the lost change of the week. These are the dimes that slipped through the cracks. You don't want to be highlighted for this slide right here. These are all guys who you missed. Like, I'm up there, I missed, Actually, are all of us up there?
Nope.
I'm definitely up there. I've been up there every week.
Yeah, you are. You keep missing.
But
no, yeah, Castle Rock Rockers are not. But, let's get into the first lost change of the week. In the quarterback position, Geno Smith for the TD11 Tudgays. Honestly, 19.9 points for the best performing QB benchwarmer. I mean, that's high. I'm sure. I haven't gone through. I'm sure you want to have played him. But that's not wild. Especially in a Superflex league, you're not going to get these crazy QB breakouts, other than week 1 when actually Carson Wentz absolutely popped off and he was on your bench, Garrett. But aside from that, 19.9 points, that's not too crazy of a miss, especially with it being Geno Smith. Who would have expected that, right? So let's just move on past that and go to the running back benchwarmer of the week, Khalil Herbert. This one was on your team, Ubby.
Unfortunately, yes. So, in my defense, how was I supposed to know David Montgomery would get injured within like the first 2 seconds of the game, and Khalil would get all the carries and the touchdowns and the catches? And last week I had 60 points on the bench. This week I had 70. So, wonderful time.
Oof. Yeah. Was that 70 between like how many players?
The 70 was between 2 players, and the 60 last week was also between 2 players.
Oof,
Garrett Wilson and Aiden Hutchinson last week, and then we'll get to who the other person was fairly quickly here.
You were also got another lost dime? Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes, sir.
Well, then let's just keep looking for it. But Garrett, with the wide receiver benchwarmer, Chris Olave on the Flower.
Yeah, I'll take Chris Olave. Yeah, for sure. So he's actually a rookie this year. So obviously, whenever you have a rookie outperform, a lot of your starters, you didn't really expect it because the man has only played for 3 games. In his first game, he only had 9 points. Second game, 12. But, I mean, his projected was like 10. They have a pretty deep, wide receiver room. So I can't really blame them for not playing him. 25.7 points, though. You could have kind of expected that, just with the Jameis Winston offense when, he's, the cornerbacks for, Carolina are, going to be covering Michael Thomas and, a few other receivers. So he was definitely left open, and he was really their only offense that day. If Baker Mayfield beats you, that's
right.
So,
I mean, I will say, Jameis Winston has a broken back, and still Chris Olave was able to get 25.7 points. So,
I don't blame the Paramount team at all. Like, this seemed like a terrible start, honestly. Like, if I had seen Chris Olave, I wouldn't have started him either. So
no, I agree.
Totally. I completely agree.
Not a miss. Not a miss at all.
100%. David Njoku was the tight end bench warmer of the week. Kind of a breakout. David Njoku has always been kind of like the athletic demon, right? I mean, this guy is just an absolute beast of a man.
He's
but
crazy.
He never was able to really pull it all together for the Browns. But was that maybe Baker Mayfield's fault? Because he just put up 23.9 points for the Irving Indica.
I know they did on the bench, so is it really for the team? Is it really for Irving?
That's fair, but
right.
All things considered, this is the type of hit, and I think the same with the Chris Olave hit, where yes, that sucks that you didn't start him this week, but it's not a feels bad moment because this was kind of a lottery ticket choice, right? Like don't choose David Njoku thinking he's going to get you 20 points.
Especially when he puts up, below 6.5 points the first 2 weeks. This is a breakout for him this season, technically.
The question now, of course, is just can he sustain it? I don't know. If I'm Irving Indica, I don't think I swap him into the starting lineup.
I don't think he can anyway. I believe he got slightly injured during this game.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So
I got notification saying that he didn't practice, so I wasn't sure what happened, but I assume he got slightly hit or something. Not positive.
Yeah. If he is healthy, I don't know. I would start him. Based on the tight end that they're trying to play now is Gerald Everett. He's been fine, right? Like, he's gone above his projections just barely each week, but he has not been anywhere near 23.9, and I don't think the Browns have that tough an opponent this week. So I don't know. I would actually start him, in my opinion. So I think it's good, especially playing against the Steelers.
Right. And then, of course, defensive side of the ball. I'm happy about this one because Point Break was playing me this week, and they left 39 points on the bench with DeMarcus Lawrence. Terrifying.
Yeah, I cannot believe they didn't start DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yeah, that did surprise me a little bit. I think I would have DeMarcus Lawrence as a must start. But the first 2 weeks, he didn't put up crazy performances. Week 1, only 7 points. Week 2, 10 points. So I can see where they were going with it, especially, you have other options who have been performing better fantasy-wise leading into this week. I can see where the thought process is. It does definitely suck that, when DeMarcus Lawrence kind of lives up to his reputation, his sort of pedigree with the Cowboys, that you don't have him starting, right? But I get it.
He had like 3 sacks, right?
That's actually,
3
he's saying
sacks.
he live up to his pedigree, but he's never had 3 sacks in a game in his entire career. Like, that was the highest he had ever had. I think he's had 2.5 before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was a breakout game. Again, anytime you're playing anybody on the Cowboys defensive line or linebackers, they are benefiting from Micah Parsons, Odigizua. Like, there are a lot of young players that are just absolutely busting that lineup right now. And if you do not start DeMarcus Lawrence against, the #1 sack team in the league next week against Washington, Point Break, I'm going to intentionally trade for him so that I can do it.
No, for sure. And Washington has given up 15 sacks. Dallas has gotten 13 sacks. It's going to be a game to watch. And with Micah and DeMarcus having a little competition going on, I don't know if y'all know, they're trying to see who can get more sacks, and they're both at 4 right now. So it'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, and then moving to the DB bench warmer of the week. Fun fact about this. So, Ubby, I'll of course let you take it away. He doesn't have a NFL picture. I had to use his Baylor headshot for this.
So he was one of my later picks because I did not know who he was. And, I was like, I need a bench person for, when somebody's not playing, I'll take him. First week, he's on my bench, drops 15 points. Second week, I think I have him in. Regardless, he only dropped 7, which is why I put him on the bench again for this past week. And I'm watching the game, and I see he gets a sack. Then I see an interception. Then I see another interception. And I knew at that point that I screwed up heavily. And at the end of the game, I check, man has 41 points. So between him and Khalil Herbert, I left a whooping 70 points on the bench between 2 players.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was.
If this is any indication as to how your drafting is going to do next year, I think we should all be scared of Abi. You drafted him with the 35th pick draft. So if you're hitting that
really well the draft, but
yeah,
35th round. Yeah,
his rookie year. Yeah, 35th round.
Crazy.
So I picked a lot of the younger guys for defensive players because I figured they'd learn within the year. I did not expect him to go out there and be like this. And along with Aiden, the Detroit Lions had another rookie, Malcolm Rodriguez, who I also drafted. And he's out there dropping like 15, 18 points as well. So, these rookie defensive players have been doing me well. I just got to trust them enough to start them.
Right. Not leave them in the cracks. But the linebacker bench warmer of the week, Jerome Baker, he's actually on my team.
Your linebacker's going off.
Yeah, this one was kind of weird. I had a pretty decent linebacker turnout this week, all in all, so I wasn't too upset about it. And he had kind of not done too great the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's that Miami Buffalo game we talked about, right? Like, if you were a defensive player in that game, you had to get a bunch of points.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the Dolphins' defensive players just racked it up. And so, I don't feel bad about this one at all for leaving him on the bench, but it would have been nice to have started him for sure.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't feel bad at all. This seems pretty normal.
But yeah, let's hop into the donuts of the week. Funny. Well, it looks like only one team's highlighted here. It's definitely not the, this is, we said last section was where you don't want to be highlighted. This is the section where you really don't want to be highlighted. Coming in with absolutely 0 points for the Flower Mound team was Preston Smith. This was hilarious. Preston Smith, a lot of the time when people see, donuts, they're like, oh, what happened? Did he go out early due to an injury? Did anything happen? No, 51% snap participation.
That's so odd. He's coming off a 30-point week, too.
Single point or do anything when you're playing for literally half the game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and like Garrett said, 30 points last week. Flower Mound team throws him in. He plays 0 points.
Oh, that's just evil. Because you see the 30, and you're like, okay, great. I mean, 2 sacks, plenty of hits on the quarterback, 3 tackles for loss. He's going to get me a bunch of points this week. And to get 0? Just 0? That's so evil. We don't have many donuts, so that's tough.
100%. And then, of course, for the Flower Mound team again, Kyle Duggar. Now, this one is a little weird. I looked into this one. He actually didn't play this week. He was a game time decision. He practiced the previous week, and then right before game start, they take him out. I think Flower Mound team just didn't realize it.
Yeah, I think this is that's tough.
That's tough.
That's a lesson in fantasy team ownership for sure. Like, you got to be on it.
Yeah, it's scary because there's definitely been a ton of times where, like, you'll see the questionable guys, right? And questionable to me means play him anyways, because who cares?
Totally.
He was questionable all week. He was practicing. To me, that's usually green flag, taken out last minute. And actually, that's the exact same story with Marcus May. Exact same story. Practiced all week, was questionable, but, getting reps at practice, it tends to be a green flag that he's going to end up playing out right before the game start.
That's wow.
Yeah,
I'm scared to make fun of him too much because I mean you get singled out if you're in the donuts of the week category, and if I end up doing this, I'm never gonna live it down. So you did great, Flower Mound. It's not your fault. Happens to everybody.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just brutal. But luckily for everyone else, those are the only 3 donuts of the week. But they all ended up on the Flower Mound team. But now let's go into the accolades. What did people do well, and what did people do not as well? So, starting off, of course, right? Best manager, CD's Nuts, coming in with 309.84 out of a possible max point of 349.84.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty low score. I think that first week was kind of an anomaly for bad owners so far. When we had people scoring like, 330, 340?
Yep.
Multiple people over 300. I think we've definitely come back down to earth this week. And with as many upsets as we've had as well and close games in the league, I don't know, points just are not being scored. I mean, NFL, what happened to your product, right? Like, this is odd. But yeah, to be, the owner of, Cooper Kupp, who apparently is just going to get 30 points every single week, to be the entire Rams offense, you're going to put up a bunch of points. I love their team. I think CD's Nuts is definitely a top 3 contender. So yeah, great job being the best manager. There you go now.
Absolutely. So then,
very efficient.
There you go. Worst manager. Ubby, why don't you talk on this one, Ubby?
I am so excited about this because Irving Indica was my opponent this week, and before the week had started, there was a lot of talk about how my team would get beaten to the ground. And I'm not gonna lie, I also believe that to be true because I was 0-4 and he was 4-0. So all things pointed to me being, destroyed. And it started off that way too, with Lamar dropping 40 points, so I thought it was over. But as the Sunday games went along, my defensive players, including Randy Gregory, thank you, Nick, has performed. And it looked like I might pull this through. And next thing I know, Irving Indica's certain teams just got 5-6 points on defense. They just weren't doing what they were supposed to do. And it was very disappointing, honestly, for him. I was expecting a lot more from his team. Glad they didn't pull through. But it was surprising for sure. He's still a top 3 contender in my opinion, but just a bad week.
This seems like the number 1 contending team to me still, personally. Like, they had a terrible week, and Lamar Jackson scored like 1/5 of his points, which is pretty crazy. I mean, we have 20 players, but like, that's how bad this week was.
No, and when I mentioned it, I pointed out after the win, when as you do in fantasy group chats, when you're talking about, I thought you would win, he hit me with a one-liner that I just couldn't respond to. He was like, "Congrats on the best week you'll have this season." And honestly, I was like, "Well, yeah, probably, but I won."
Yeah,
true. And I actually just went and looked.
The worst week of your season. I mean, that's what you should have said.
Hey, you killed him. There you go. But so I went back and checked. He had 14 players get in the single digits.
Oh my god.
Lovely. I love it.
Brutal.
Imagine if I had played Khalil Herbert and
you would have destroyed. Yeah, I mean, you would have been even crazier. But I mean, especially with like the trades and some of the rhetoric that, like you said, Abby, was being thrown in the Discord. Like, this is the first like sweet win we've had, or sweet loss. Just seeing somebody, be so confident in their team, and then really just getting, kicked 7 ways to Sunday. So
it was a great moment. I was very excited. Oh, and same thing. We were expecting a blowout for this game, or at least Irving Indica was expecting a blowout. It was, he went in thinking there would be a blowout, but he expected it to be the other way around. That's all I'm going to say about this.
This is absolutely hilarious to me for so many reasons. One, the 0-4 team got the biggest blowout against the 4-0 team that everyone thought was the best team in the league. And honestly, I mean, I don't know what the consensus was, but I think a lot of people were, especially after seeing a lot of your trades that you made, were thinking that you punted, like it was over for you. So the consensus... number 1 at this time, number 1 getting beaten by the consensus sort of we're tanking team is hilarious.
No, 100%. I did not expect the win. I see, even if I am a contender for the number 1 overall pick, I'm a big believer and you should still try, because I'm not a fan of tanking, just to lose. So right. I'm never going to do that. So I'm so happy with the wins I do get. I just don't expect to do it a lot based on, how my team has performed.
Exactly,
but if every
100%.
team ends up having their worst week against me, and I end up, doing well with all these picks, it would be astounding. It would be beautiful.
Exactly. But, the narrow victory goes to myself, which wasn't that narrow of a victory.
Not narrow at all compared to our first 2 weeks.
No, only, what is that, 18 points difference? Not that close.
That's not that close. The first week, we had somebody lose by 1 and 3.
Yeah. It was crazy. But the funny thing is, it's almost like, the fantasy gods knew. The funny thing is, going into Monday night game, okay? going into the Monday night game, I, according to Sleeper, had a 6% chance of winning.
Who did you have in the Monday night game?
In the Monday night game, actually, so both of us had players in the Monday night game.
Right.
It was, I had, let me think,
You had
Ezekiel
Sweet.
Elliott, and
Right.
the Point Break FC had Tony Pollard.
Weird.
I also had Donovan Wilson, and I believe, and Point Break FC had Leighton Van Der
I know
Esch.
why. Yeah, I know why you made it is because of freaking Donovan Wilson. I mean, that's
yeah.
the best game he's had in his career. So that made sense to me, but I was just wondering what they had to even contest with that. So
Yeah.
that's great.
So
Yeah, Tony Pollard.
absolute huge. It's funny. It doesn't look like a narrow victory, but it sure felt like one at the time. So
There you go.
I deserved this. All right. Well
Okay,
fought
yeah,
from
sure.
me.
Whatever, yeah, you win.
I loved how like the 2-0-4 teams went out and got some wins this week.
True. But the highest scorer of the week was CD's Nuts, also the best manager. It makes sense that they were the highest score, 309.
Yep.
And you said it earlier, Garrett. This is a lot lower scoring than what we were in week 1.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think week 1 was insane. Let me actually just pull up the week 1 report real quick because I'm just interested in who our highest score was. Yeah, it was 340 points. So we're 30 points below at our highest, and we had multiple people. I think half the league in the 300s in the first week. Yeah, we had 6 players in the 300s our first week.
Yeah, that first week I had 300 and I lost by like 3 points. Was very disappointed. But the 30-point differential between that first week's high score and this week's high score is a Cooper Cup. We're missing a Cooper Cup essentially. That's insane.
Yep, that's a whole Cooper Cup game.
One whole Cooper Cup. That's a good unit of measurement.
Yeah, 1 cup.
And then, of course, the lowest score, the number
Yes,
one,
sir.
what
Yes,
people
sir.
thought was the best team, Irving
Thinking
Indica.
about 'em.
I mean, I honestly still think they're the best team. It's like the Colts beating the Chiefs. Do I think the Colts are better? No. But will I talk will I still say stuff about it? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, so Irving Indica with 221.58, a huge fall from grace. But like you said, they're going to bounce back. It's not going to be a big deal. They're going to move on. The overachiever, though. There we go, Castle Rock Rockers.
Yeah, as it says, we were projected 281, and for a long time there, I was actually projected in the 320s because I had Micah Parsons playing on Monday night. He was my last player to play, and we were already at like 300. Like, we were just on the edge. He did not show up that night. I mean, he did for the team for that game by, getting other people involved, like D-Law. That's why sacks are such a hard stat. Just because you don't get a sack every week doesn't mean that you're not like the best defensive player in football, which I still believe he is.
Also, you have to remember that he was sick. They weren't sure he was going to play, but then he tweeted that Michael Jordan flu game thing. He was sick, and he went out and played.
Yeah, I don't like the Michael Jordan tweet. Personally, I thought it was a little like, look at me-ish.
It was.
Like, whatever you got to do to get yourself motivated, I guess. He said it was like, oh, I did that for personal motivation. I'm like, well, I just showed the video to yourself. Like, you put it on Twitter. But it is what it is. We're, proving week in and week out that I think we have the most dominant defense in the league. Even when we don't have, like, the Javon Hollins going for 38 points, we consistently have multiple over 25-point players every single week in a very, very, very young core. And Micah, Nick Bolton, Nick Bosa. Like, we just have incredible players, and they did so well this week. I'm really proud of them. Seriously.
There you go.
I agree completely.
Give them all a pat on the back.
For real.
I'm excited to see what they do against the team that gives up the most sacks.
Right.
Yes, no, I am as well.
And I mean, we've already talked about this at length, so we can move past this. But of course, below expectations.
Keep beating it into the ground.
Right.
He went
Yeah,
3
they're
for 3.
down. We're just kicking them at this point. The below expectations award to Irving Indica.
Yes. Yes.
And the Dallas Clovers love it.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of this.
Well, so these were all the matchups of the week in their totality. So the Plano Nukes beat Point Break FC, as well as scoring above the median.
And look at Point Break though, the first 0-6 team.
The only team without a win.
Winless team.
Yeah, great. Hopefully they can turn that around for their own sake. But then, of course, the Atlanta Cicadas took one over the Flower Mound team. They're looking pretty good. They had kind of a shaky first 2 weeks. I think they lost. I mean, they had a great first week. They just ended up losing to the highest score.
1 point. Yeah.
So they're
not even a
contending.
point. It was like 0.7. It was insane.
It was technically less than a point. Yeah. So they were 1-1 after week 1. They were 1-1 last week, and then they took both games this week.
Right. Of course, Dallas Clovers. You didn't beat the median, but you did beat the worst team.
Plano Nukes. I was over it until that last interception, and it pissed me off so much.
Oh yeah. Yep. Shot it straight up there. But you got your dub, your first dub. You're now no longer a 0-win team, so that's exciting. Castle Rock Rockers took it over the Trash Fires. Trash Fires, unfortunately, again, also didn't miss median. They were the closest to also getting over the median. So you had to beat him as well, in addition to my score, in order to be able to, or not my score, also the Tudgay. So you needed, let's see, how many more? Like 7-8 more points in order to have gotten your median win.
So if only I had played, the 70 points on the bench.
Yeah, that would have put you up at 2-4, which is nothing to write home about, but is definitely getting yourself on the right track. But
it is what it is.
Yeah, and then the last matchup, of course, CD's Nuts versus the T11 Tudgays. CD's Nuts 4-2, but honestly, they're looking kind of scary.
After playing them last week, I can attest to that. I luckily got the median, but yeah, they're looking like a scary team.
So looking at this, right, what are y'all's top 3 teams right now?
I think the top 3 is, I think there's a consensus across the league. Let's all say our third team first, maybe, because I think we're all gonna have the same order too.
Okay. I am not sure that we will have the same order, but my number 3 is actually the Atlanta Cicadas.
Yeah,
mine as well.
I told you.
Okay. Nice.
And then number 2, CD's Nuts.
Yep.
Number 2, CD's Nuts, and number 1, even after this week, still Irving Indica.
Okay. Yeah. So we're all at consensus. All right. Never mind.
I think the league pretty much knows.
Okay. Cool. I will say, it's starting to look a little shaky with the 221 performance, but as of now, they are still my number 1. If they drop another bad week, they're out of there.
I think
fair though, his bench as well. There were some players that dropped, in the 20s. So if he had picked a little bit better, maybe. But yeah, one more week of this, then I don't know. But as of now, I'm willing to let 1 week slide.
Yeah, going off strength of roster too. I think that the Irving Indica are just bounds above everybody else. So
totally agree.
And they added D-Hop.
Week 7, he's gonna come back, and there you go.
I guess
a little bit of energy.
Yeah.
But where we are now, here's the current standings of everything.
Love how I won for the first time and then dropped a spot. But love seeing you right above me, Plano Nukes.
I also love seeing myself above you. Garrett, you want to talk on this at all?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think the glaring thing for me is that regardless of the TD11 Tudgays being in the number 1 spot unanimously, we do not have them in the top 3.
Right.
That is, wow. Yeah, I just didn't even think about that.
I don't know what it is. If there's just an air about that team, did they have a bad week? I think for me, I'm really focusing more on roster than I am week-to-week performance, especially after only 3 weeks. You can't really just say, oh, well, they're 5-1, so they're the best team. That's not how fantasy works ever. I just think that it's maybe the strength of their team, but hopefully, in their hype video for the Super Bowl, they can call back to this moment when they weren't even a top 3 team.
Exactly.
0.4 for the the 3 teams that we did say are in our top 3. There are more. It might just be that like the 3 teams that we said when they were performing, they were really out there performing well.
Yeah. No, I mean, the T11 Sudgaze, if you look at their points for and points against, I mean, that's one of the better spreads as well.
Yeah, they've gotten lucky against matchups. Probably had me already.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything that stands out initially to you, Nick?
It definitely stands out to me that I have the least points for currently in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So that's disappointing. But one other
No, you
fun-
don't. Do you? Oh, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Oh, my
I
God.
have the least points for.
The only
Yeah.
one not at least
The
800.
thing that's interesting and is something to keep your eye out on is I like looking at that max points for column because it
Yeah.
really talks to your overall team strength. And the deeper in the season you go, you're going to have to start relying more and more on your depth players as bye weeks come, injuries come. And again, it's early, right? This is the end of week 3. The Atlanta Cicadas, though, currently have the most max points for it.
Yep, that's true. And like we said, we all had them, in our 3rd spot. I think if you just go down the list, right? Like my team, for example, I mean, we're at 1045, which is, technically on like the lower end of that. But everybody from 5 down, except for the Trash Fires, unfortunately, is basically around that same number. Like they're all within almost 20 points of each other, which is crazy. And then in the points against column, I mean, there are 2 teams that stand out to me that haven't really faced too much craziness, and that's my team and your team, Bobby.
Yeah, and then we're also doing so poorly that it's very disappointing.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
1-5 with the least points against you.
In my defense, that first week, I got beat by 3 points against the direct matchup and by 1 point against the median. So that first week, I got 2 losses by less than 5 points.
Yeah, that's
So-
a Detroit Lions type of game.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually going to take offense to that comment when you lumped us in together. My points for are still very, very high, like compared to the rest of the league. Like I'm in like the top 5 spot where I should be. I think points for is definitely like a good metric to go by, at least for these first 3 weeks, obviously, because that's what you're scoring. And my points against happen to be low, but like regardless, if I was matched against, most people in the right column, like it's pretty even. So, I'm not too worried. But yeah, I think you can also look at some of the teams that are unbalanced, right? Like if you have more points if you have more points against and like less points for, like John Madden used to say in his infinite wisdom, if you score more points than your opponent, you're going to win the game. And that's clear here.
Right.
It's crazy to me that Plano Nukes, like Nick, your points against is so much higher than your points for, but you still have more wins.
Well,
Yeah.
to be fair, my first week was really bad. I actually still, even with Irving Indica's bad performance this week, hold the record of least points for in a single week. I only got like 217. So that's going to hamper long-term that points for column. But it's week to week. It was a bad first week, sure. But, with all these trades that have been made and putting some more injections and life into this roster, I think we took kind of 2 different approaches. You kind of went, okay, let's stockpile picks. And I said, all right, I'm going to buy up the players that are doing well. So, especially
We went the opposite direction.
We'll see, right? We'll see how it ends up working out for the season overall. But I am trying to breathe back life into the team. I'm not quite ready to give it up.
I'm a pessimist. I was ready to give it up after I lost by 1 point the first week. I was done. I was like, I hate fantasy football.
It's over. It's over, ladies. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I definitely agree, Nick. That max points for column, I want to watch that, especially over like these next 2 weeks, because it seems to indicate a lot. Like you said, going forward with, when we get into bye weeks on week 6, which is something I've been looking at and a lot of teams really cannot deal with. I'd love to see what that does to the league standings, and we'll really see how deep these, top 4, top 5 contenders are.
Yep, 100%. Well, that's pretty much it. We got nothing else here. So, hey, Ubby, you want to wrap it up for us?
Let's go, Abby.
So, it was
really fun talking about all this and getting to vocalize why I made these trades that I made this week, because I've been getting a lot of questions from a lot of the people in the league asking why I did what I did. So it was nice to get to talk to you, Nick, and explain both our sides about all this, and seeing how we thought about it and what we think is going to happen has been super interesting. And then getting to see the points for, points against in this big format and understand that my team really has sucked has really put things into perspective. So
Oh my God.
It's validating. It's validating. You're like, I thought my team sucked, and oh, look at that. It is. Like, that's good.
it is. I'm not wrong. I suck. Like, I suck at fantasy football this season.
Oh no. All right, well, from all of us at Bad Owners, this has been week 3, and we can't wait to see you guys in week 4.
Woohoo!